Vienna's experience demonstrates that policy choices matter. Cities that treat housing as infrastructure, invest in long-term affordability, and prioritize integration over segregation are better positioned to manage urban growth and maintain living standards. As debates over housing policy continue, the lessons from Vienna offer a reference point for what is possible when public purpose guides development. The question of how to ensure broad access to foundational resources is not limited to housing. Other areas of social policy, including education, have begun to show similarly far-reaching effects on economic mobility. Education policy remains a central factor in shaping economic outcomes, influencing how societies adapt to changing labor markets and technological disruptions. As governments reassess the value of higher education, recent years have seen a renewed debate over the economic impact of tuition-free systems and the broader role of public investment in knowledge and skills. Among the best documented examples is Finland's long-running commitment to free higher education. Since abolishing tuition fees, Finland has prioritized broad access to university and vocational training, with the aim of equipping its workforce for rapid technological change. Policymakers point to the country's ability to retrain workers for emerging fields, particularly in response to automation and artificial intelligence. Early evidence suggests that these policies support higher labor force participation rates and smoother transitions between sectors, although the long-term effects on innovation and productivity are still being analyzed. The Finnish model emphasizes the idea that education should function as a form of economic infrastructure, supporting not just individual advancement, but wider adaptability and resilience. Elsewhere, the debate over education funding often centers on the trade-offs between access, quality, and fiscal constraints. While some countries experiment with tuition-free models, others maintain or even increase user fees, citing budgetary pressures and concerns about efficiency. Critics of free education argue that such policies may strain public finances, particularly in larger or more diverse economies. However, proponents point to the potential for broader social benefits, including higher social mobility, reduced inequality, and a more dynamic labor market, when barriers to education are minimized. In the United States, the consequences of rising education costs are increasingly visible in broader economic dynamics. The Federal Reserve has highlighted how high student debt burdens can delay home ownership, reduce small business formation, and alter consumer spending patterns. These effects ripple through the economy, shaping demand for goods and services and influencing overall growth. At the same time, the persistence of education-related debt has prompted renewed calls for policy reform, with some states exploring targeted tuition relief or expanded access to vocational training as alternatives to traditional university pathways. Recent research also underscores the importance of aligning education systems with labor market needs. Countries that regularly update curricula and invest in adult retraining are better positioned to respond to shifts in technology and industry demand. Finland, for instance, has implemented government-backed programs to retrain workers for AI-related roles, with a notable share of the workforce participating in these initiatives. By contrast, systems that rely heavily on private financing or lack coordinated retraining efforts often struggle to adapt, leaving workers vulnerable to job displacement and wage stagnation. The broader economic literature suggests that investment in education yields returns that extend well beyond individual earnings. Studies of Scandinavian countries, for example, estimate that each dollar spent on higher education can generate several times that amount in long-term economic growth, driven by innovation, higher productivity, and greater workforce flexibility. These findings challenge traditional views of education as a purely personal investment and support the argument for treating education as a public good. Still, implementation challenges remain. Expanding access without addressing quality or labor market alignment can lead to mismatches between graduate skills and available jobs. Some countries have encountered capacity constraints or uneven outcomes when rolling out tuition-free policies, highlighting the need for careful planning and ongoing evaluation. Policymakers must balance the goals of equity, efficiency, and fiscal sustainability while ensuring that education systems remain responsive to changing economic conditions. The conversation around education's economic role increasingly intersects with other policy domains, from housing and health to environmental sustainability. As societies grapple with the demands of technological change and demographic shifts, the ability to equip people with relevant knowledge and skills becomes a key determinant of economic resilience. The challenge is not only to expand access, but to ensure that education systems support broader societal goals and can adapt to new realities. This emphasis on adaptability and resource management is also reshaping how countries approach other foundational systems. New models are emerging that treat waste and resource use as integral parts of economic planning, reflecting a shift toward more circular and sustainable forms of growth. The circular economy. Over the past decade, the circular economy has gained traction as an alternative to the traditional linear model of take, make, dispose. This approach seeks to extend the life cycle of materials through reuse, repair, remanufacturing, and recycling, aiming to reduce waste and minimize resource extraction. While the concept is widely promoted by policymakers and industry leaders, real-world progress remains uneven, with notable differences between countries, sectors, and even cities. Some nations have made visible headway by integrating circular principles into their waste management and manufacturing systems. For example, several European countries have introduced extended producer responsibility programs, requiring companies to manage the collection and recycling of their products at end of life. These initiatives have encouraged manufacturers to redesign products for easier disassembly and material recovery. In certain regions, deposit return schemes for bottles and packaging have achieved high collection rates, creating a reliable stream of secondary materials for industry. However, these successes are often concentrated in wealthier, densely populated areas with established infrastructure and strong regulatory oversight. Elsewhere, the transition has proven more difficult. Many developing countries face significant barriers in building the sorting and processing infrastructure needed for effective recycling. Informal waste collection remains widespread, and attempts to formalize these systems can meet resistance from existing workers who depend on the current structure for their livelihoods. Even where new facilities are built, participation rates can plateau without sustained public engagement and incentives. Statista reports that global recycling rates have improved modestly in recent years, but major gaps persist between high-income and lower-income countries. Business models are also evolving in response to circular economy principles. Some companies now lease products rather than selling them outright, maintaining ownership of materials and ensuring their recovery at end of life. This product-as-a-service model is most common in sectors like electronics and lighting, where firms can refurbish or recycle components to reduce material costs. While early results suggest profitability and resource savings, these approaches require significant changes to logistics and customer relationships. Not all industries have found it practical to adopt circular models at scale, particularly those with complex supply chains or products that are difficult to disassemble. Economic data from cities experimenting with circular policies show mixed results. Some urban areas have reported growth in circular businesses and reductions in the use of virgin materials. These changes have supported local job creation, particularly in repair, refurbishment, and recycling sectors. However, labor market impacts are not universally positive. Sorting and recycling jobs can be hazardous and often pay less than traditional manufacturing roles. Retraining workers for new positions in repair or remanufacturing remains a challenge, especially where educational and vocational systems are slow to adapt. Material markets introduce further complications. Prices for recycled commodities such as plastics, metals, and paper often fluctuate significantly, making long-term investment in recycling infrastructure risky. When the price of virgin materials drops, demand for recycled inputs can fall, undermining the economic case for circular systems. Policy tools like carbon pricing and digital product passports have been introduced in some regions to improve the competitiveness of recycled materials and track them through supply chains. But results are still emerging. Measurement and accounting frameworks present another set of obstacles. Standard economic indicators like GDP do not fully capture the benefits of waste prevention or resource efficiency. As a result, circular activities may appear less valuable in national accounts compared to traditional extraction and manufacturing. Some countries have begun developing alternative metrics that track material footprints or resource productivity alongside conventional measures, but these efforts are still in early stages. Consumer behavior plays a crucial role in the success of circular initiatives. In places where waste sorting and recycling have become routine, often due to years of public education and enforcement, participation rates are higher and material recovery is more efficient. However, cultural differences and varying levels of infrastructure mean that widespread adoption is far from guaranteed. Efforts to encourage repair and reuse have seen some success, but often require sustained incentives and shifts in consumer expectations. Despite these challenges, the circular economy continues to attract interest as a potential strategy for decoupling economic growth from resource consumption. While current achievements are promising, they remain concentrated in specific sectors and regions. The broader question is whether these models can scale to address global resource constraints and environmental pressures.